live stream is loading. Please pray with me. More of you, O Christ, less of me. More of you, O Christ, less of me. More of you, O Christ, less of me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts draw us closer to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Anybody an expert on Sirach? Anybody heard of Lady Wisdom before? Holy Wisdom, yes. So there's so much of the Bible that just doesn't get read. Now, I have to admit that this particular text is from the deuterocanonical works. It isn't always accepted as part of the canon. But Holy Wisdom does show up in Proverbs as well. So this does show up in the canonical part of the Hebrew Bible. And it's an astonishing thing because this is a female deity. It's hard to imagine all the things that she describes herself as and all the things she does and all the places she goes as anything less than something extra human. This is not, your average gal wandering around the street, coming out of the mists and such what. And because this character appears in a number of places in the Hebrew Bible, there are a number of folks who believe that in the first century, one of the ways of understanding the incarnation is that this Lady Wisdom, or Sophia in Greek, as the Septuagint called her, that Sophia, present at the creation as part of the multiplicity of forms of the one God, that this wise woman who in Proverbs cries for her children and seeks justice, that this is exactly who Jesus is. And it got pretty exciting when people started, instead of just saying Christ, they would say Christ Sophia. And interestingly enough, the text, the gospel lesson for today was John 1:1. The Word, could the Logos also be Sophia? Was with God and was God. And the Word became flesh and dwelled among us. The lectionary also offered this text from Sirach, making it very clear that the people who set up the New Revised Common Lectionary have accepted the idea that who John is talking about is this Holy Wisdom character. We often think of the incarnation being that alternate Messiah, the one who comes to bring peace, not a sword, the one who says there will be peace on my holy mountain, the one that Isaiah speaks of, the suffering servant. But this is another way of understanding the incarnation. And for those of us who are female, it's kind of good news because it comes in a female package. Wisdom knows her own glory. And when she speaks, the whole host of heaven hears her glory. And she is on the earth like a mist everywhere. And encamped in the heights and appeared as a pillar of cloud. And remember, when the people of Israel were wandering in the desert after being released from their bondage in Egypt and were wandering, they were led by a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. And what that says to me is we could let wisdom lead us. We could let wisdom lead us here on the earth. And then finally, she asked this final question. Among all these, having toured all of the earth, I sought a resting place in whose inheritance should I abide? Now, none of you brought it up, but because we just finished reading a book on angels and ancestors and saints, one of the answers to my what wisdom will you primarily rely upon in the new year could have been part of your inheritance, part of our wisdom inheritance. And I'm really going to think a little bit about that as the year begins and the Epiphany season comes. What is your wisdom inheritance? Well, certainly we've all inherited the Bible and the Christian faith as we've known it and our spiritual practices, but we've also inherited the wisdom of saints whom we admire, ancestors both of the blood and of the spirit, and maybe a few angels along the way. Sometimes as we've done this project, when things looked really grim and we really weren't sure what step was next, we occasionally had a few miracles come from angels, and they were usually unexpected angels. And occasionally they were expected, but mostly unexpected angels. And so even though I don't tend to be one who focuses on a sort of God will do this and God will do this theology, I don't really want to try to be in the what God will do predicting game. A lot of people like to play that game. I think that's above my pay grade. I think God will do what God will do. And what we can control is what we do. And it would help us all as we begin this year to sort of take an inventory of the wisdom you have received. Not ideas, not even beliefs, but wisdom. And remember, when we're thinking about wisdom, wisdom isn't just knowledge or experience, but instead it's knowledge and experience brought together, along with a sense of, as the text says, an inheritance. Nancy, our lawyer, would tell us that there's the law and then there's the wise application of the law. And that takes into account the particular circumstances of the case and perhaps even your own wisdom. I remember when Sonia Sotomayor was being interviewed, she said, I can't set aside that I'm female and Latina. Of course not. That's a gift I bring. That's a wisdom she brings to the court. Some people didn't like that answer, that she wouldn't fall into the trap of, oh, there's some kind of objective knowledge and we know what it is. No, she takes responsibility for the fact that she has a wisdom that is particularly hers, and she will bring it to the interpretation of law. Well, we do the same thing in terms of our own spiritual lives. And I think at this beginning of this year to take some time to really organize our sort of wisdom sources. Some of you know that for a little bit of time in high school, I was a debater. And back then, this is before computers and everything else, we had little note cards. And we would sit and think about all the possible things that could happen in our case. And we would write a note card on that. So if our opposing team argued a particular thing, we could just pull out how we'd already thought about that. So I'm thinking about maybe making like a wisdom recipe box of some of the bits and pieces that I've learned over the years. I started this on Blue Sky, which if you're not on Blue Sky, come join us. It's lovely over there. They have a part of Blue Sky that's just called Book Sky. And it's where people talk about books and authors talk about their new books. And it's just wonderful. It's like your favorite librarian, only it's all of them in the nation, talking about books and what they mean. And they asked people to do 20 books that have influenced you or impacted you. No reviews, no knowledge, just a book cover. And so I found myself picking 20 books that really have stayed with me in one form or fashion for various reasons. And some of them are fiction, and one of them is the Bible. 2 or 3 of them, maybe more, maybe like 5 or 6 of them are theological in nature. But some are, fiction, some are recent, some are old. But it's been a book that either I quote regularly or I think about because it's become part of like my wisdom library. Because when I read that book, it created something in me that has stuck. So my invitation to you this week is to look inside, see your own glory and wisdom, and perhaps take as an invitation the opportunity to see what inheritance you have from the holy. Because when we do that, we come full of all we can be. And also, doesn't have to be so serious. I love Nancy in the conversation that the 101-year-old said to not get angry and to have a lot of fun. So don't make it a serious task. Have a blast thinking about it. But let your soul sink down and go a little deeper into the things that really make you you. The things you can rely on when the going gets tough. The things that hold you up when you don't really know what's next. So, Happy New Year, everyone, and happy Epiphany tomorrow. I hope you celebrate 12th night tonight with joy, because tonight's the 12th night. Tonight's the 12th night of Christmas. So maybe even watch 12th night or just have a wonderful party. That was the tradition. That's part of our inheritance, the 12th night in tradition. And may this year be one filled with wisdom, not only for us, but for all those who we know and don't know.